Homeless boy screams at millionaire, "Don't go into that house." He froze when he discovered the reason. Before we dive into this story, comment below, where in the world are you watching from? Subscribe and turn on notification for more heartwarming stories. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across Westfield Heights as Elliot Harrington stepped out of his sleek black sedan. His expensive suit still crisp from another day of million-dollar deals. His newly purchased mansion was everything he'd dreamed of: towering columns, ivy-covered walls, and windows that sparkled like diamonds in the fading light. Westfield Heights wasn't just any neighborhood, it was where dreams came wrapped in gold. Every street corner whispered stories of old money and new fortunes. Luxury cars purred down tree-lined avenues, past gates that cost more than most people's homes. This was where millionaires came to play, and billionaires came to hide. Elliot Harrington belonged here. His rise from middle-class nobody to business titan had been swift and ruthless. Every deal he touched turned to gold, every investment multiplied like magic. He'd built his empire on one simple rule: never let emotion cloud judgment. Numbers didn't lie, feelings did. But tonight, something felt different. As he stood before his latest acquisition, a nagging whisper scratched at the back of his mind. The seller had been too eager, too willing to drop the price. What should have cost him $8 million had been his for around $6. Red flags that would have stopped any reasonable buyer cold. Yet Elliot had silenced those doubts with cold logic. Market fluctuations, he'd told himself. Desperate sellers made smart buyers rich. He'd even bragged to his business partners about outmaneuvering the competition. While they hesitated, he struck. While they questioned, he conquered. The mansion itself seemed to mock such concerns. Its beauty was undeniable. A masterpiece of stone and glass that belonged in magazines. Every window perfectly aligned, every detail crafted by masters. Neighbors would envy him, rivals would burn with jealousy. This house wasn't just a home, it was a statement. Standing there in his $1,000 suit, briefcase full of contracts worth millions, Elliot felt untouchable. He'd built his fortune by trusting his instincts, by seeing opportunities others missed. Risk was just profit waiting to happen. Fear was for those too weak to seize their moment. The evening air carried the scent of roses from nearby gardens, mixed with the distant hum of wealth and power. Everything was perfect. Everything was under control. This was his world, his kingdom, his destiny. Or so he believed, until a ragged boy emerged from the shadows with a warning that would shatter everything. "Don't go into that house," the boy said. The peaceful evening exploded into chaos. A little boy, stumbling forward on bare feet. His clothes told a story of survival, a faded shirt hanging loose on his skinny frame, pants with holes that showed scraped knees beneath. Dirt covered him from head to toe, mixed with streaks that could have been tears or sweat. But his eyes held something far more powerful than poverty. They blazed with pure terror, the kind that comes from seeing death up close. This child knew something. Something that made him risk everything to warn a stranger. Elliot felt his perfect moment crumble. His business mind kicked in, treating this interruption like any other problem to solve quickly and quietly. The boy was trespassing on his property, disturbing his peace, ruining his plans. "What do you think you're doing?" Elliot's voice cut through the air like ice. "This is private property. You need to leave. Now." The boy didn't run. Instead, he planted his feet wider, his small body shaking but determined. His breathing came in short gasps, like he'd been running for miles. When he spoke, his voice cracked with raw emotion. "Please, mister. Don't go in there. You have to listen to me." Elliot's patience snapped. He'd closed million-dollar deals today, fought corporate battles, conquered business rivals. He wasn't about to be lectured by some homeless kid who probably wanted money or attention. "Listen to you about what?" he shot back, his tone sharp enough to cut glass. "You're wasting my time." The boy's face twisted with frustration. His hands clenched into tiny fists as he searched for words that might save a life. When he spoke again, his voice rose to almost a shout. "It's not safe. That house, something's wrong with it." Those words hung in the air between them like a challenge. The boy's chest heaved as he stared up at the wealthy man, waiting for some sign that his message had broken through. His whole body trembled, not from cold but from the weight of what he carried. Elliot stood motionless, his expensive suit a stark contrast to the child's rags. One hand still gripped his briefcase full of contracts, the other held the key to his doom. Two different worlds had collided on this quiet street, and only one of them understood the true danger. The boy had risked everything to deliver his warning. Now the question remained, would anyone believe him before it was too late? The boy's words poured out like water from a broken dam. "I've been living around here for weeks," he said, his voice shaking but steady. "I see everything. I watch from the bushes, from the alley behind the fence. People come to look at this house, but something always goes wrong." Elliot's business instincts told him to walk away from this conversation. Children made up stories. They craved attention, invented drama where none existed. But something in the boy's voice made him pause, a weight that spoke of real experience, real fear. "Last Tuesday," the boy continued, "a man in a grey suit came here. He had keys just like yours. He went inside for maybe 10 minutes. When he came out, he was stumbling like he was drunk. Then he just collapsed right there on those steps." The child pointed to the marble entrance where Elliot had been standing moments before. His finger trembled as he spoke, and his eyes never left that spot. "They took him away in an ambulance. He wasn't moving. Since then, nobody's come back. Not until you." Elliot felt his confidence waver. The seller had been unusually eager to close the deal. Phone calls at odd hours, pushing for faster paperwork, dropping the price without negotiation. At the time, Elliot had seen it as weakness, a desperate man making poor choices. Now, different possibilities crept into his mind. "You're talking about smells?" Elliot asked, his voice softer now. "What kind of smells?" The boy's face scrunched up as if remembering something terrible. "Sharp. Like cleaning stuff mixed with something rotten. It comes out when the wind blows from the house. Makes my eyes water. Makes me feel sick." A chill ran down Elliot's spine despite the warm evening air. He'd built his fortune on reading people, on spotting lies and half-truths. This child wasn't lying. Every word rang with honesty born from terror. Sometimes at night, the boy whispered, "I hear sounds from inside." Not footsteps. More like hissing. Like air leaking from somewhere it shouldn't. Elliot's hand tightened around his keys. His rational mind fought against growing alarm. Gas leaks were serious business, deadly serious. But surely professionals would have caught something so obvious. Wouldn't they? "Why should I believe you?" he asked, though his voice lacked its earlier edge. "Why would you care what happens to me?" The boy's answer came without hesitation. "Because I tried to warn the others, and they didn't listen. That man who collapsed, I tried to stop him too. He called me names, told me to get lost." His voice dropped to barely a whisper. "I watched him fall. I couldn't help him." Two forces battled inside Elliot's mind. Logic said this was nonsense, children's fears blown out of proportion. But instinct, the same instinct that had made him millions, screamed danger. The boy stood waiting, his young face etched with desperate hope that this time, someone might actually listen. Elliot stared at the ornate door handle, his golden key poised between doubt and determination. Behind him, the boy watched in silence, his terrified eyes boring into the wealthy man's back. The evening air hung heavy with tension, as if the world itself was holding its breath. Business logic won the battle in Elliot's mind. He'd built his empire on facts, not fairy tales. Professional inspectors had cleared this property. Legal documents bore official seals. A homeless child's ghost stories couldn't outweigh cold, hard evidence. "Stand back," he told the boy, his voice steady but not unkind. "I'm going to prove there's nothing wrong with this house." The key slid into the lock with a soft click that seemed to echo through the quiet street. Elliot turned it slowly, feeling the mechanism give way with well-oiled precision. The seller hadn't lied about maintaining the property's basics, at least. As the lock disengaged, something changed in the air around them. A whisper of movement, so subtle it might have been imagination. The boy took an instinctive step backward, his bare feet scraping against the pavement. Elliot pushed the heavy door inward. The first thing that hit him was beauty. Marble floors stretched across a grand foyer, leading to a sweeping staircase that belonged in a palace. Crystal fixtures caught the last rays of sunlight, casting rainbow patterns across cream-colored walls. This was exactly what he'd paid for, luxury that would make his rivals weep with envy. Then came the smell. It started as barely a whisper in his nostrils, so faint he almost missed it. Something sharp and chemical, like cleaning products left too long in a closed space. But underneath that familiar scent lurked something else, something that made his stomach clench with instinctive alarm. "Just old house smell," he muttered, though his voice lacked conviction. Every mansion had its quirks, its aged odors. Nothing a good cleaning crew couldn't handle. He stepped across the threshold. The moment his expensive shoes touched that perfect marble floor, the air changed completely. What had been a whisper became a shout. The chemical smell exploded into his lungs like liquid fire, harsh and bitter and wrong in every possible way. His throat began to burn. Not the gentle burn of spicy food or strong drink, but something violent and immediate. His eyes started watering as the invisible poison clawed at his tender membranes. Each breath became a struggle against air that seemed to fight back. "What the?" he gasped, but couldn't finish the sentence. His lungs refused to cooperate, seizing up like engines without oil. The briefcase slipped from his suddenly nerveless fingers, landing with a crash that echoed through the toxic space. Panic flooded his system as his body screamed warnings his mind had ignored. This wasn't old house smell or cleaning products. This was death itself, invisible and patient, waiting to claim anyone foolish enough to enter its domain. His legs went weak beneath him. The beautiful foyer began to spin as his oxygen-starved brain struggled to function. He stumbled backward, fighting against air that had become his enemy, his expensive suit offering no protection against the invisible killer. "Gas," he wheezed, the word barely escaping his burning throat. The boy was right. Behind him, small hands grabbed at his jacket, pulling him toward safety with surprising strength. The child he dismissed as a nuisance had become his lifeline, dragging him away from a death that had been waiting with perfect patience. Fresh air hit his face like salvation itself. "What's the scariest warning you've received? Tell me in comments." Outside on the sidewalk, Elliot gulped clean air like a drowning man finding shore. His hands shook as he fumbled for his phone, fingers still trembling from his brush with death. The boy stood beside him, silent but watchful, his young face etched with concern that seemed far too mature for his age. 911, what's your emergency? Elliot's voice came out hoarse and raw. Gas leak. Serious gas leak at 1247, Westfield Heights. The whole house is filled with it. Someone could die. As he spoke to the operator, providing details and answering questions, his eyes kept drifting to the small figure beside him. This child had saved his life, and he didn't even know the boy's name. The call ended with promises of immediate response. Fire trucks and gas company crews would arrive within minutes. The danger would be contained, the leak found and fixed. But as Elliot slipped his phone back into his pocket, a different kind of reality began to sink in. He really looked at the boy for the first time. Not just the torn clothes or dirty feet, but the hollow cheeks that spoke of missed meals. The way he stood slightly apart, as if expecting to be dismissed at any moment. The careful distance he kept from adults, like someone who'd learned not to trust too easily. "What's your name?" Elliot asked, his voice still rough from the chemical burn. "Sam," came the quiet reply. "Sam, where do you live?" The boy's shoulders lifted in a small shrug that broke Elliot's heart. "Around. Wherever I can find a spot." Those simple words hit harder than any business loss ever had. This child lived on the streets. Slept wherever he could find shelter. Survived on whatever scraps he could find or kindness strangers might offer. And yet, when danger threatened a complete stranger, he'd risked everything to help. Guilt crashed over Elliot like a wave. How many times had he walked past homeless people without a second glance? How many Sams had he ignored, dismissed, forgotten? His world of luxury deals and profit margins suddenly felt hollow and small. But guilt quickly transformed into something more powerful. Gratitude. Pure, overwhelming gratitude for this brave child who'd seen past their differences to save a life. Sam hadn't cared about Elliot's expensive suit or fancy car. He'd simply seen someone in danger and acted. "You've been trying to warn people about that house," Elliot said, his voice growing stronger. "How long have you been doing that?" Sam's eyes dropped to the ground. "Couple weeks. Ever since I saw what happened to that first man. Nobody listens to kids like me." The simple truth of those words stung. Nobody listened because nobody saw. Sam was invisible to people like Elliot. Part of the background noise of city life, easily ignored and quickly forgotten. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. Emergency crews would handle the gas leak, make the house safe again. But Elliot's mind was already moving beyond that immediate crisis to a bigger picture, a larger responsibility. He knelt down, bringing himself to Sam's eye level. For the first time in years, money and deals and profit margins meant nothing. Only this moment mattered. Only this choice. "Sam," he said, his voice steady now, filled with purpose. "You saved me. Now I save you." The boy's eyes widened with surprise and something that might have been hope. As the first fire truck rounded the corner, red lights flashing against the evening sky, Elliot knew his life had just changed forever. Not because of a business deal or investment opportunity, but because a homeless child had shown him what real courage looked like. The days that followed became a whirlwind of phone calls, paperwork, and possibilities. Elliot's first priority was getting Sam off the streets. Within hours of their encounter, he'd arranged temporary housing at a local youth shelter. But temporary wasn't enough. He wanted something permanent, something that would give this brave child the foundation he deserved. Finding Sam's story proved harder than any business deal Elliot had ever navigated. The boy had been on his own for months, slipping through cracks in a system designed to help but often failing. No family had reported him missing. No school had his records. He was a ghost in plain sight. But Elliot refused to give up. He hired investigators, worked with social services, pulled strings he'd never bothered to use for anything beyond profit. Slowly, pieces of Sam's past emerged. A runaway from foster care, escaping a situation that had been worse than the streets. While the legal wheels turned, Elliot discovered something unexpected happening to himself. The mansion deal, once the crown jewel of his ambitions, no longer seemed important. Numbers that had once excited him felt empty. Profit margins that had driven his decisions now seemed meaningless. The gas company had fixed the leak within days. A faulty connection in the basement had been slowly poisoning the air for weeks. The previous owner had known, they discovered, had tried to hide the problem with quick fixes and cover-ups before selling fast and cheap. Elliot could have sued, could have demanded compensation, could have turned the whole mess into another financial victory. Instead, he found himself asking different questions. How many other people might face similar dangers? How many other Sams were out there, trying to warn a world that wouldn't listen? The mansion itself became secondary to the lesson it had taught him. When repairs were complete, when the air was clean and safe, Elliot didn't move in. He couldn't. Every room reminded him of how close he'd come to losing everything that truly mattered. Instead, he began using his wealth differently. Homeless shelters received unexpected donations. Youth programs found new funding. Organizations helping runaway children discovered a silent partner with deep pockets and deeper commitment. Sam flourished in his new environment. Good food, clean clothes, and steady shelter worked miracles on the hollow-cheeked boy who'd emerged from the bushes that evening. But more than physical care, he'd found something precious, someone who truly saw him, valued him, believed in him. He'd learned that true wealth couldn't be measured in property values or bank statements. It lived in the lives you touched, the people you helped, the courage you found to do what was right. A homeless child's warning had saved his life. But more than that, it had saved his soul. Inspired? Subscribe for more life-changing moments. Months later, on another quiet evening, two figures could be seen walking together through a different neighborhood. One wore a simple jacket and jeans, no longer needing expensive suits to prove his worth. The other had grown taller, his face filled out with proper meals, his eyes bright with hope instead of fear. They moved side by side, talking and laughing like family. Elliot had learned that real treasure wasn't hidden in bank vaults or locked behind mansion doors. It lived in moments like these, in the trust of a child who'd given him a second chance, in the knowledge that his choices now made the world a little better. Sam had taught him that wisdom often came from the most unexpected places. A homeless boy had possessed more insight than teams of business experts. A child society ignored had shown more courage than men with everything to lose. Their story had started with a warning that saved a life. But it had become something far greater, proof that human connection could bridge any gap. Wealth and poverty, age and youth, privilege and hardship, none of these barriers mattered when one person chose to see another as worthy of care. The mansion on Westfield Heights still stood, now safe and beautiful under his ownership. But its real legacy wasn't in marble floors or crystal fixtures. It was in the lives it had brought together, in the lesson it had taught about listening to voices the world preferred to ignore. Sometimes salvation comes from the places we least expect. Sometimes the people we dismiss as powerless hold the keys to our greatest transformation. And sometimes, a narrow escape becomes the doorway to a richer, more meaningful life. True wealth, they both discovered, was measured not in what you owned, but in what you gave away. Hit the subscribe button and turn on notification bell. Next story drops tomorrow.